The sun came up over London on a special May morning. This was not just any day. Today, King Charles would be crowned at Westminster Abbey. For Prince William, this day meant many things. His father would become king, and William would move one step closer to the throne himself. William woke up early at Kensington Palace. He could not sleep much the night before. Too many thoughts filled his head. He stood by the window and looked out at the city. Flags hung from buildings. People were already lining the streets. The whole world was watching London today. "Are you ready?" Kate asked as she came into the room. She looked beautiful in her white dress. A small crown of flowers sat on her head. William turned and smiled at his wife. "As ready as I can be," he said. "How are the children?" "George is dressed and ready. Charlotte is almost done. And Louis?" Kate laughed. "Louis is being Louis. He's jumping on his bed in his underwear." William smiled. His youngest son was always full of energy. "I'll go help him," he said. In Prince Louis's room, clothes were laid out on a chair. The little boy was indeed jumping on his bed, laughing. "Having fun?" William asked. Louis stopped jumping and grinned. "Daddy, will there be planes today?" "Yes, there will be planes," William said. "But first, you need to get dressed. Today is a very important day for Grandpa." "Because he's going to be the king," Louis said, climbing down from the bed. "That's right," William said, helping his son with his shirt. "And we need to be there to support him." In another room, Princess Charlotte stood still as a helper fixed her hair. She wore a pretty white dress with a small tiara. She looked very much like her mother. "Do I look like a princess?" she asked when William came to check on her. "You are a princess," William said, bending down to kiss her cheek. "And you look perfect." Prince George, the oldest, was already dressed in his smart suit. He sat quietly, reading a book about past kings and queens of England. "Nervous?" William asked him. George looked up. "A little," he said. "There will be so many people watching." William sat next to his son. "I was nervous at my first big royal event too," he said. "Just remember to stand tall and smile. You'll do fine." Kate came in, leading Louis by the hand. The little boy was finally dressed in his suit. "Look at us," she said. "The Wales family, ready for history." They all went downstairs where a big breakfast waited for them. They needed to eat well because the day would be long. As they ate, William told the children about what would happen. "First, we'll drive to Westminster Abbey," he said. "There will be crowds of people watching. We should wave to them." "I'm good at waving," Louis said, showing his wave. "Yes, you are," Kate said with a smile. "Then we'll go into the Abbey," William continued. "It's a very old, very special church. We'll sit and watch as Grandpa is crowned king." "Will it take long?" Charlotte asked. "Yes, it will," William said honestly. "You'll need to sit still and be quiet. It's very important." "I can do that," George said seriously. Outside, they could hear the sounds of people and music. A royal helper came to tell them it was time to leave. The cars were waiting. William looked at his family, his beautiful wife, and 3 children. Today they would be part of history. Today the world would see them as the future of the royal family. "Let's go," he said, taking Kate's hand. Together, the Wales family walked out of Kensington Palace and into the bright morning light. Cameras flashed. People cheered. The journey to Westminster Abbey was about to begin. The royal cars waited outside Kensington Palace. They were big, black, and shiny. Workers had cleaned them early that morning until they sparkled in the sun. A line of royal guards stood by the cars. They wore red coats and tall, black, furry hats. "Look at all the people," Louis said as he held his mother's hand. Beyond the palace gates, thousands of people waited. They held flags and signs. Some had camped out all night just to get a good spot. "They're here to see Grandpa become king," Kate explained. "And they want to see us too." The family walked toward the first car. Helpers opened the doors for them. Inside, the seats were soft and made of fine leather. William helped the children buckle their seatbelts while Kate checked that everyone looked perfect one last time. "Remember," William said to his children, "when we drive through London, people will wave at us. We should wave back. Like this." Lewis asked, and waved his hand wildly back and forth. William smiled. "Maybe a bit slower," he said. He showed a gentle, royal wave. Like this. The three children practiced their waves. George's was perfect. Not too fast, not too slow. Charlotte's was just like her mother's. Lewis tried his best, but still waved with too much energy. "You'll get better with practice," Kate told him kindly. The driver started the car, and they moved slowly down the palace driveway. Police on motorcycles went in front to clear the way. As they passed through the gates, the crowd cheered loudly. "Wow," Charlotte said, looking out the window with big eyes. The streets of London looked different today. Red, white, and blue flags hung from buildings. Pictures of King Charles were everywhere. People packed the sidewalks 10 rows deep in some places. "There are so many people," George said quietly. He seemed a bit nervous. William put his hand on his son's shoulder. "They're happy," he said. "This is a big day for our country." The car moved slowly through the streets of London. Famous places passed by their windows: Hyde Park, Green Park, Piccadilly, Trafalgar Square. At each place, more and more people waited and cheered. Inside the car, Kate pointed out interesting things to the children. "Look at that lady's hat," she said, showing them a woman wearing a hat shaped like the British flag. The children laughed. Lewis waved nonstop, his small hand moving back and forth until it got tired. "My arm hurts," he said after a while. "You can take a break," William told him. "We still have a long way to go." Charlotte sat very straight in her seat, just like a princess should. She waved only when people looked directly at their car. "Mummy," she asked, "will I wear a crown like Grandpa someday?" Kate smiled. "Maybe not like Grandpa's," she said, "but you might wear a tiara at special times." George was quiet, watching everything carefully. He would be king one day after his father. William knew his son was thinking about this. "What are you thinking about?" William asked him softly. "Just watching," George said. "I want to remember everything." The car turned onto the Mall, the famous road that leads to Buckingham Palace. Here, the crowds were even bigger. People stood behind barriers, waving flags and taking pictures with their phones. "Wave now," Kate reminded the children. "This is an important part of the route." All three children waved from the windows. People cheered when they saw the young princes and princess. As they got closer to Westminster Abbey, they could see the famous building ahead. It was very old and very big, with tall towers and pointed arches. The abbey had been there for hundreds of years. Many kings and queens have been crowned inside its walls. "We're almost there," William said. He straightened his military uniform and medals. Kate checked the children one last time. "Remembered," she said, "when we get out of the car, there will be many cameras. Stand straight, smile, and stay close to Daddy and me." The car slowed down as it approached the Abbey's main entrance. Guards and officials waited for them. The great doors of Westminster Abbey stood open, ready to welcome the future king and his family. The car stopped in front of Westminster Abbey. Outside, hundreds of cameras waited to take pictures of the Wales family. Men and women in fancy clothes stood ready to welcome them. The Abbey bells rang loudly above, filling the air with music. "Ready?" William asked his family. Kate nodded. The children sat up straight in their seats. The car door opened. William stepped out first. He turned to help Kate, who looked beautiful in her white dress and small crown of flowers. Then came George, tall and serious in his blue suit. Charlotte followed, her white dress matching her mother's. Finally, Lewis hopped out, looking around with big eyes at all the people. The family stood together for a moment. Cameras flashed all around them. William and Kate smiled. The children tried their best to smile too, though Louis kept looking up at the huge Abbey building. "It's so big," he whispered to Charlotte. "Shay," she told him. "We have to be good now." A man in a fancy uniform bowed to them. "Your Royal Highnesses," he said, "please follow me." The Wales family walked toward the Abbey doors. The path was covered with a red carpet. Flowers in white and gold lined the way. People on both sides bowed or curtsied as they passed. Inside the Abbey, it was both dark and bright at the same time. Dark because the building was old with high stone walls. Bright because hundreds of candles burned, and colored light came through the stained glass windows. Music played softly from a big organ. "Wow," Louis said, his voice echoing a little. Kate put her finger to her lips to remind him to be quiet. The Abbey was full of people. Kings and queens from other countries sat in special seats. Famous people from all over the world were there too. Everyone wore their best clothes. Women had fancy hats and men wore suits or uniforms. A helper showed the Wales family to their seats near the front. They would sit close to where King Charles would be crowned. As they walked down the long aisle, everyone turned to look at them. William nodded at people he knew. Kate smiled gracefully. "Everyone is looking at us," Charlotte whispered. "Just keep walking," Kate told her quietly. "You're doing very well." They reached their seats. William and Kate sat with George between them. Charlotte and Louis sat on either side. The seats were old and made of dark wood with red cushions. Each seat had a special book on it with the order of the service. George picked up his book and opened it. "It says the service will last 3 hours," he told his father. William nodded. "It's a very important ceremony," he said. "Many parts must be done just right." Louis wiggled in his seat. 3 hours is a long time," he said. Kate leaned over. "There will be music and special moments," she said. "And if you sit nicely, we can have ice cream later." Louis smiled at that idea. He tried to sit still, but his feet still swung back and forth under his seat. The Abbey was filled with special smells: old stone and wood, fresh flowers, candle wax, incense that priests swung in metal holders. Charlotte breathed it all in, trying to remember every detail. From where they sat, the family could see the special chair where Charles would sit to be crowned. It was very old and made of wood. Under it was a stone called the Stone of Scone. Every king and queen of England had been crowned sitting above this stone for hundreds of years. "That's where Grandpa will sit," William explained quietly to his children. "And one day, many years from now, that's where I will sit. And then, George, many, many years later, that's where you will sit." George looked at the chair with wide eyes. It seemed both wonderful and a bit scary to think about. Suddenly, trumpets began to play. The music was loud and made everyone sit up straight. The great doors of the Abbey opened wide. "It's starting," Kate said to the children. The Wales family turned to look back down the long aisle. Soon, King Charles would walk through those doors. The coronation was about to begin. The trumpets played a beautiful song. Everyone in Westminster Abbey stood up. William and Kate helped their children to stand. Louis stood on his seat to see better, but Kate gently pulled him down. "You can see from here," she whispered, lifting him a little higher in her arms. Down the long aisle, King Charles appeared. He wore a long red robe with white fur trim. The robe was so long that 4 helpers had to carry it behind him. He walked slowly and carefully. Next to him was Camilla, who would become queen today too. "There's Grandpa," Charlotte said softly. George watched with serious eyes. Louis waved, but William gently took his hand. "We don't wave now," he said quietly. "We just watch." As King Charles passed by their seats, he turned his head slightly and gave a small smile to his grandchildren. The children stood very straight and didn't move. They had practiced this moment. After King Charles and Camilla came many important people. There were priests in white robes. Soldiers carried special swords and golden objects. Ladies in waiting held up Camilla's robe. They all walked to the front of the Abbey. The music stopped. A man with a loud voice called out, "Your Majesty, I present to you King Charles, your undoubted king." Everyone in the abbey said together, "God save King Charles." The Wales family said it too. Even Lewis joined in, his small voice adding to the hundreds of others. King Charles sat in the coronation chair. It was the same chair William had shown the children earlier, an old chair where kings and queens had sat for hundreds of years. The Archbishop, a man in gold and white robes, stood before King Charles. He held a small bottle of special oil. "Now comes a very important part," William whispered to his children. "The anointing." The Archbishop put a drop of oil on King Charles's head, hands, and chest. This was a sacred moment. It showed that God blessed the new king. During this part, helpers held a special cloth over King Charles so people couldn't see. It was a private moment in the middle of the public ceremony. Lewis leaned over to George. "What's happening?" he asked. "Sheh," George said. "It's the holy part." After the anointing, the Archbishop brought out the crown. It was big and heavy, covered in gold and jewels. The diamonds sparkled in the light from the candles and windows. Kate bent down to her children. "Watch now," she said. "This is the moment Grandpa truly becomes king." The abbey was completely quiet. No one moved or spoke. The Archbishop lifted the crown high for everyone to see. Then, slowly and carefully, he placed it on King Charles's head. The moment the crown touched his head, the whole abbey came alive. Trumpets played loudly. People shouted, "God save the king." Church bells rang throughout London. William looked at his children's faces. George watched with wonder in his eyes. Charlotte smiled wide. Lewis covered his ears because of the loud trumpets but peeked through his fingers at his grandfather. King Charles sat tall in the coronation chair, the crown shining on his head. He held the royal scepter in one hand and the orb in the other. These were special objects that showed his power as king. "Long live the king!" everyone shouted. The Wales family joined in. William's voice was strong and clear. He had practiced this moment in his mind many times. One day, he would sit in that chair. The crown would be placed on his head. Kate squeezed his hand, knowing what he was thinking. She looked at George too. The little boy watched everything with careful eyes. He was seeing his future, though it was many years away. Next came another important part of the ceremony. King Charles had to be recognized by important people from all parts of the country. One by one, they came forward to kneel before him and promised to serve him. William would be one of these people. He turned to Kate. "It's almost my turn," he said. Kate nodded. She would stay with the children while William went forward to honor his father, the new King of England. The time had come for William to go forward. He stood up from his seat and straightened his uniform. Kate gave his hand a quick squeeze. The children watched their father with big eyes. "Be right back," William whispered to them. He walked slowly down the steps and across the floor of the abbey. Everyone watched him. He was not just any person going to greet the king. He was the Prince of Wales, the next king to be. William stopped in front of his father. He bowed low. Then he knelt on one knee. This was a moment both men had thought about for many years, a father and son, but also a king and his heir. "I, William, Prince of Wales, pledge my loyalty to you, my king and my father," William said in a clear voice that filled the abbey. King Charles looked at his son. For a moment, it seemed like just a father and son, not a king and prince. Then King Charles nodded and touched William's shoulder. William stood, bowed again, and stepped back. From their seats, the Wales children watched with wide eyes. "Daddy bowed to Grandpa," Lewis said, sounding surprised. "Because Grandpa is the king now," Charlotte explained. "Everyone bows to the king." "Even Daddy?" Lewis asked. "Even Daddy," George said seriously. Kate watched her husband return to his seat. His face looked calm, but she knew this was a big moment for him. William sat down next to her again. "You did well," she whispered. The ceremony continued. The archbishop said prayers. The choir sang beautiful songs that echoed in the high ceiling of the abbey. Louis started to get wiggly again. He swung his legs and looked around at the people. "How much longer?" he whispered to his mother. "Not too much longer," Kate said, though she knew there was still about an hour to go. She reached into her small purse and took out a tiny toy soldier. She had brought it just in case Louis needed something to keep him busy. Louis took it happily and played quietly with it in his lap. Next came a special part of the ceremony where King Charles promised to be a good king. He placed his hand on the Bible and made promises to rule fairly, to protect the church, and to serve the people. These were the same promises kings and queens had made for hundreds of years. George listened carefully to the promises. William noticed his son's serious face. "These are important words," William told him quietly. "Remember them." After the promises, more music played. The choir sang a song that had been written just for this day. The music was so beautiful that Charlotte swayed a little in her seat. Even Louis stopped playing with his toy soldier to listen. Then something special happened. King Charles turned to look at his family. This was not part of the ceremony. It was just a grandfather looking at his grandchildren. He gave them a small wink. Louis giggled. Charlotte smiled. George sat up even straighter. "Did you see that?" Kate whispered to her children. "Grandpa winked at you. Even with his crown on, he's still your grandpa." This made the children happy. The ceremony seemed less scary now. The next part of the ceremony was the giving of special gifts to the new king. Important people brought forward objects that showed different parts of being king. There was an orb that showed the world, a ring that showed marriage to the country, and a special glove that showed protection of the people. William leaned over to his children. "Watch this part," he said. "These objects are very old and very special." As the gifts were presented, the Wales family watched with interest. The golden objects shone in the light. The archbishop explained what each one meant. Kate looked at her children's faces. They might not understand everything about the ceremony, but they were watching history happen. Someday they would remember this day when their grandfather became king. And someday, far in the future, they would see their father crowned in the same way. The ceremony moved to its next important part. King Charles stood up from the coronation chair. Helpers fixed his long robe. The crown sat heavy on his head, but he stood straight and tall. "Now comes the homage," William whispered to his children. This is when important people in the country bowed to the new king and promised to serve him. First, the royal family would bow. That meant William and other royal family members. Then church leaders would bow. Then government leaders. William stood up again. This time, he looked at his children before he left. "Watch how I do this," he said to George with a small smile. "Someday, people will do this for you." George's eyes grew wide. Charlotte looked at her brother with a mix of pride and wonder. Louis was busy trying to see over the tall person sitting in front of him. William walked to the center of the abbey again. Other royal family members joined him. Together, they bowed to King Charles. The new king nodded to each of them. From her seat, Kate watched her husband with pride. She knew that William was thinking about his own future. One day, he would stand where his father stood now. And one day after that, George would stand there too. The homage took a long time. Many people came forward to bow to the king. Louis began to get tired. He leaned against his mother's arm. "Are we done soon?" he asked. "Almost," Kate said. She took out a small packet of candies from her purse. She gave one to each child. "These will help you stay awake a little longer." The children sucked on their candies. The sweet taste helped them focus on the ceremony again. Now it was time for the most important church leaders to bow to the king. The archbishop and other church people in fancy robes came forward. They knelt before King Charles and kissed his ring. This showed that the church supported the new king. "Why do they kiss his hand?" Charlotte asked. "It's an old tradition," Kate explained quietly. "It shows respect for the king." The ceremony had been going on for over 2 hours now. The abbey was warm with all the people inside. The candles made the air smell like wax. Louis's eyes began to close. He tried to stay awake, but he was only 5 years old, and it was a very long ceremony. Kate noticed Louis getting sleepy. She put her arm around him. "You can rest for a little while," she said. Louis leaned his head against her and closed his eyes. Charlotte sat very straight in her seat, like a proper princess. She watched everything with bright eyes. She noticed the beautiful dresses of the ladies, the shiny medals on the men's uniforms, and the way the light came through the colored windows. George kept his eyes on his grandfather. He studied how King Charles sat, how he held the scepter, how he nodded to people. George knew that one day he would need to do all these things. William noticed his son watching so carefully. He felt proud of George. The boy already understood the importance of what was happening. Suddenly, a choir of children began to sing. Their voices were high and clear, like angels. The song was about peace and hope for the country. The music filled every corner of the ancient abbey. Louis woke up when the singing started. He sat up and listened, his eyes wide now. "It's pretty," he whispered. The singing marked the end of the main part of the ceremony. King Charles stood up. Helpers arranged his robe again. He turned to face the people in the abbey. With the crown on his head and the scepter in his hand, he truly looked like a king. Everyone stood up. The Wales family stood too. Even Louis stood tall now, all sleepiness gone. The Archbishop spoke in a loud voice. "I present to you King Charles, your undoubted king." Everyone in the abbey shouted together, "God save the king! Long live the king!" The royal children joined in the shout. Their small voices added to the hundreds of others. The sound was so loud that it seemed like the old walls of the abbey shook. King Charles began to walk back down the aisle. His crown shone in the light from the windows. His long robe trailed behind him. He passed by the Wales family and gave them a small nod. After King Charles walked down the aisle, it was time for the royal family to leave Westminster Abbey too. William turned to Kate and the children. "It's time to go," he said. "We'll follow Grandpa in the procession." The Wales family stood up from their seats. Kate helped straighten Charlotte's dress and fix Louis's hair, which had become messy when he was sleepy. George stood tall, ready to walk out with perfect royal posture. "Remember to smile and wave when we go outside," Kate reminded the children. "There will be many people watching." The family joined the line of important people leaving the abbey. They walked slowly down the same aisle where King Charles had just gone. The music played again, and everyone in the abbey stood as they passed. Charlotte noticed that people bowed or curtsied as they walked by. "They're bowing to us too," she whispered to her mother. "Yes," Kate said. "That's because we're the royal family, but we bow to the king." As they walked, William held George's hand. Kate held Louis's hand, and Charlotte walked between her brothers. They looked like a perfect royal family, handsome, proper, and proud. When they reached the big doors of the abbey, they could hear the sound of the crowds outside. It was like the roar of the ocean, thousands of voices cheering at once. "Ready?" William asked his family. The children nodded. The doors opened, and bright sunlight hit their faces. After the dim light of the abbey, the sunshine was almost too bright. Louis blinked his eyes. Outside, the scene was amazing. Thousands and thousands of people filled the streets. They waved flags and cheered when they saw the Wales family. Cameras flashed like lightning. The noise was so loud that the children could hardly hear their parents. "Wave," Kate reminded them with a smile. The family waved to the crowds. Louis's wave was still too fast and excited, but people loved it. They cheered even louder when they saw the little prince waving with so much energy. A line of royal cars waited for them. But first, they had to walk down the abbey steps and along a short red carpet. Soldiers in bright red uniforms stood on both sides, standing straight with swords raised. "Look, Daddy," Louis said, pointing at the soldiers. They have swords. Yes, they do, William said with a smile. They're the royal guards. They protect our family. The walk to the cars seemed to take forever because they had to move slowly and keep waving. Charlotte's arm got tired, but she kept waving because she knew it was her duty as a princess. George walked carefully, his face serious. He watched his father and copied exactly how William waved and nodded to people. Finally, they reached their car. Helpers opened the doors for them. The family climbed inside, and the doors closed. Inside the car, it was quiet after all the noise outside. Phew, Louis said, falling back against the seat. That was loud. William and Kate laughed. Even George and Charlotte smiled. The serious part of the day was over, and now they could relax a little. You all did wonderfully, Kate told the children. I'm so proud of you. Even me. Louis asked. I fell asleep. Even you, Kate said, giving him a kiss on his head. You woke up for the important parts. The car started moving. Outside, people still cheered and waved as they drove past. The children waved back through the windows. Where are we going now? Charlotte asked. To Buckingham Palace, William said. There will be a special lunch with Grandpa and other important people. Will there be cake? Louis asked hopefully. Yes, there will be cake, Kate said with a smile. And after lunch, something very special will happen. What? All three children asked together. William smiled at their excited faces. We'll go out on the palace balcony with Grandpa, and there will be a fly-past of planes. Louis's eyes grew wide with excitement. He loved planes, real planes, flying over the palace. Real planes, William confirmed. The Royal Air Force will fly over in formation. It's a special honor for the new king. As their car drove through London streets, the children looked out the windows with new energy. The most exciting part of the day was still to come. Standing on the famous Buckingham Palace balcony with their grandfather, the new King of England. The car drove through London streets toward Buckingham Palace. The roads had been closed to normal traffic, so their journey was smooth. Outside the car windows, people lined every inch of the route, waving flags and cheering. Look at all the flags, Charlotte said, pointing to the red, white, and blue banners that hung from buildings and windows. The whole country is celebrating today, William told his children. It's not every day that a new king is crowned. The car turned onto the Mall, the famous road that leads to Buckingham Palace. Here, the crowds were even bigger. People stood 20 rows deep in some places. When they saw the Wales family's car, they cheered and waved with great excitement. Wave back, Kate reminded the children. All three children waved through the windows. Louis pressed his face against the glass to see better. He left small fingerprints and a nose print that made Kate smile. As they got closer to the palace, they could see it ahead. Buckingham Palace was huge and grand, with a golden statue in front called the Victoria Memorial. The palace was where the king lived and worked. It had over 700 rooms and was one of the most famous buildings in the world. Home sweet home, William said as they approached. Though they didn't live in the main palace, they often visited and knew it well. The car drove through the big gates and into the palace courtyard. Here, no crowds could follow. It was quiet and private. Royal guards stood at attention as their car passed. The car stopped at a side entrance where they wouldn't be seen by the public. We need to go straight to the dining room, Kate told the children as they got out of the car. The lunch will start soon, and Grandpa will be waiting. Inside the palace, everything was busy. Staff hurried back and forth. Some carried trays of food. Others moved chairs and arranged flowers. Everyone had a job to do on this special day. The Wales family walked through grand hallways with red carpets and gold decorations. Paintings of past kings and queens hung on the walls. Huge chandeliers sparkled overhead. Louis looked up at everything with big eyes. This place is so big, he said. I always forget how big it is. Yes, it's very big, Kate agreed. That's why there are maps on some of the walls, so people don't get lost. They reached the state dining room, where the special lunch would be held. The doors were opened for them by staff in uniform. Inside, long tables were set with golden plates and crystal glasses. Beautiful flowers decorated every table. The room sparkled with wealth and history. Many important people were already there. Kings and queens from other countries sat at tables. Prime ministers and presidents talked in small groups. Everyone wore their best clothes and jewelry. "Find our seats," William told his family. They had special places at a table near King Charles. As they walked to their seats, people smiled and nodded at them. Some came over to say hello and tell the children how well they had behaved during the ceremony. "You sat so nicely," one lady with a big hat told Charlotte. "A perfect little princess." Charlotte smiled and thanked her, just as she had been taught. George shook hands with people who came to greet them, his handshake firm like his father's. Louis stayed close to Kate, a little overwhelmed by all the fancy grown-ups. They found their seats and sat down. Their names were written on beautiful cards in fancy writing. The table was set with more forks, knives, and spoons than the children had ever used at home. "Which ones do I use?" Louis whispered to his mother, looking worried at all the silverware. "Just watch me," Kate said with a kind smile. "I'll show you which ones to use for each food." Before the food came, they heard trumpets playing. Everyone stood up. The doors opened, and King Charles entered the room with Queen Camilla. They still wore their crowns and royal robes, though the king had removed the heaviest parts of his outfit. William leaned down to his children. "When Grandpa comes to our table, remember to bow or curtsy, just like we practiced." The children nodded, ready for their next royal duty of the day. The special lunch was about to begin, and after that would come the most exciting part, the balcony appearance and the fly-past of planes. The special lunch at Buckingham Palace lasted for 2 hours. The children tried their best to sit nicely and use the right forks and knives. Louis only spilled his drink once, which Kate thought was very good for a 5-year-old boy at such a fancy meal. When the lunch ended, King Charles stood up. Everyone in the room became quiet. "Thank you all for sharing this historic day with me," he said. "Now, the royal family will go to the balcony to greet the people of Britain." This was the moment the children had been waiting for. The famous Buckingham Palace balcony was where the royal family appeared on special days. From there, they could see thousands of people in front of the palace, and the people could see them. "Is it time for the planes now?" Louis asked excitedly. "Almost," William told him. "First, we go to the balcony, then the planes will come." The Wales family followed King Charles and Queen Camilla through the palace to the special room behind the balcony. Other members of the royal family joined them. Everyone talked quietly, waiting for the signal to go outside. A palace worker came into the room. "Your Majesty," he said to King Charles, "there are over 1 million people waiting outside. The fly-past is ready to begin in 5 minutes." King Charles nodded. He looked at his family gathered around him. "Shall we?" he said. The big glass doors opened. King Charles and Queen Camilla stepped out first. The sound of cheering was so loud it was like thunder. William and Kate exchanged a look. This was a big moment for their children. "Ready?" William asked them. "Ready," the children said together. The Wales family stepped out onto the balcony. The bright afternoon sun shone on them. Before them stretched the mall, filled with more people than they could count. The crowd roared when they saw the children. Louis ran to the edge of the balcony, almost too far before Kate gently pulled him back. George and Charlotte stood tall and proper, waving just as they had been taught. "Look at all the people," Louis said, his eyes wide. He waved with both hands, and the crowds cheered even louder. Kate put her hand on Louis's shoulder. "Look up at the sky," she told him. "The planes will come soon." All 3 children looked up. The sky was clear blue above London. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Charlotte pointed. "There. I see them." In the distance, small dots appeared in the sky. As they came closer, the dots became planes. First came helicopters, flying low and slow. Then came fighter jets, fast and sleek. The children watched with wide eyes as the planes flew right over the palace. "Wow!" Louis shouted, jumping up and down. Even George and Charlotte forgot to be proper and pointed excitedly. The last group of planes was special. The Red Arrows, famous for their air shows, flew over in perfect formation. Behind them streamed red, white, and blue smoke, the colors of the British flag. The smoke made a beautiful pattern across the London sky. The crowd below cheered and waved their flags. The Wales family waved back. William put his arm around Kate, and they both smiled with pride at their children. King Charles turned to look at his family. His face, usually serious, broke into a warm smile as he watched his grandchildren's excitement. This was what the monarchy was about, not just the crowns and ceremonies, but family carrying on traditions through the years. As the last planes disappeared, the royal family stayed on the balcony for a few more minutes, waving to the people below. This was a day that would go into the history books. Years from now, people would look at pictures of this day and remember when King Charles was crowned. For the Wales children, it was more than history. It was the day they truly began to understand their special place in Britain's story. George had seen his future role more clearly than ever before. Charlotte had learned more about being a princess in the public eye. And even little Louis had felt the importance of royal duty in his own 5-year-old way. As the royal family turned to go back inside the palace, William looked at his children with pride. Today they had been part of history. Tomorrow they would go back to being children. But the memory of this coronation day would stay with them forever.